I think you have a posse here, by the way. Like
check,
all your Gab
check,
people.
Check. Where's my Gab?
Yeah.
Whoa,
Nice job,
y'all,
guys.
you came out. It's good to see you.
Which is awesome. Okay, so I want to thank you for coming and jumping in on this conversation. I'm sure this is your natural stage setting.
No.
Okay.
It's good to see all of you.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to have these conversations in events like this, that the demographic looks a little bit different and the conversations are so central. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how we define culture.
Can I ask you a question first?
Yes.
Sid has been a long-standing friend of mine, and I have so much respect for her, so I'm going to ask her a question. I want to know, with everything you've poured into this, giving back and creating this experience for women in Utah, I want to know what this means to you.
Well, the thing that I love about the Women Tech Council is the community. I didn't expect it when we started the journey of creating Women Tech Council, that I would meet thousands of women that I didn't know that would make a meaningful difference in my life, and they have. And that's probably been the very best part, is knowing that I can pull a community of people together that wants to align on making a difference. Because for me, we all get to decide where we spend our time. And I think we all want to do things that matter, and this matters to me. And it's changed lives, it's changed platforms, and it's changed outcomes. And I never started doing it for me. I started doing it because I knew I could make a difference. And the communities let me do that. And it's super meaningful when people show up and they drive the conversations and they become part of what we do every day, because it's the only way that we've made a difference in the world.
If Sid has had an impact on your life, will you please stand? If she's been a part of something in your career.
This was not in the agenda.
Will you give one of my best friends a hand?
It also tells you there's lots of people I should meet.
Yes.
Which is awesome that we have such a community that reaches far.
She's had an impact on my career. She's actually advising at Gab right now, and her counsel and advice over the last handful of months has been extremely valuable. One of my favorite people. Okay, now you can ask me questions.
Okay, well, let's lead that into talking about culture. Like, how do you define culture in a company?
So for me, culture is how you celebrate together. It's how you treat each other when it's really hard. And it's how you give together. Those three things to me are culture. Everything else is a part of it, or can be a part of it. But if you know how to celebrate together, how to treat each other when it's really hard, and then are you looking to give together as a leadership team and as a company, and if you're doing those three things, I believe you can have an extremely powerful and positive culture. So
you've had an opportunity to be a lot of companies, a lot of big companies, from Nike to Qualtrics to running Gab. Where have you seen companies fall down? Which one do they fall down most often in building culture?
How they treat their people. When people become a commodity or a number or just the next person to fill the next seat, I think they lose the reality that there are people who have families and kids, or they're caregiving for a child. They have spouses and partners, and there are just so many different situations where when someone steps into your company to work with you, they have a life outside. And if you forget that that matters more than being at your company, you're starting to treat people like numbers and seat fillers and not the actual individuals that they are.
Okay, so also I'm not going to stay on any script, just FYI.
Yeah, that's fair.
Of any thought I had, because this is reminding me of a conversation we had an opportunity to have in December, where we were talking a lot about how companies show up for their people, because companies are made of people, and people are the reason that companies are successful. And then we're also in this recessionary time period, which is making companies pull back. But the thing that everyone remembers is how people are treated in every circumstance. And sometimes that's not well. So I remember a conversation we were having at Holiday around company, and I think you actually posted on LinkedIn about this, but how companies were choosing to lay people off right as Christmas came. And this kind of goes to what you were just talking about in culture. because companies knew that they were going to reduce headcount before the end of the year. How do you think that gets represented and reflected in culture? Because I think the way the culture is defined are in those small moments of decision. They're not in big, grandiose parties that we throw. They're in the day-to-day interactions.
Companies make mistakes, leaders make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. So our culture at Gab is not perfect. I have offended people unintentionally. I have made decisions that may have impacted someone that I didn't think through all the way. Those things happen. When a company intentionally holds on layoffs until December 15th or sometime right before the holidays and lays people off, I have a really hard time with that. And I know there are CEOs and leadership teams who sometimes say they don't have a choice, or their board made them do it, or investors made them do it. I know the finances of our company right now today. I know exactly where they're at. And I know what our runway is. And those companies know that in August, September, October. They know if they are not going to make their number in December. Why not, if you have to make a move, and companies need to lay people off at times, it's unfortunate, but it happens. Why not do it a few months before the holidays to give people some runway so that they can at least have something happening positive before the holidays? Or wait until after to allow people to clear a bit and be open in the communication and let them know that something's coming. We're doing this last-minute shock, pull people into these conference rooms with cardboard boxes, and we walk them out immediately, and it's just cold. And it's hard for me to believe that you believe in people if the actions you then take when your company is in a tight spot, you do just the opposite. So I just think there's a warmer and better way to treat our people. And I even think calling your people instead of employees makes it harder to make some of those decisions, because if they're employees and their numbers, it's easier just to check it off and let people go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, we know things in companies, and that our culture is defined. So there's one other thing I would add to culture that I've heard that I've really embraced. The culture is defined also by what we celebrate and what we tolerate inside of the organization. And I really love adding the toleration to it, because sometimes the toleration is what creates culture. And when you're thinking about how do you move people up in companies and promotion and leadership styles, we have to think about these little things that show up, because the little things ultimately define who we are.
You brought up a very important thing that I am extremely passionate about. Toxic cultures, you have to have zero tolerance. If you allow any form of toxicity, any form
I feel like
whatsoever,
there's clapping for that.
Go ahead. Especially as women, and I have 3 daughters and a wife who dominates 2 businesses. If you are walking into work and you don't feel safe, speak up. Because if you walk into an environment every day where you don't feel safe, you won't be at your very best. And I've been in cultures that have not been safe for all people in the company, but especially women. And as a woman, and also as a man, if you do not take a stand and say something, you are catering to the lowest common denominator of how people are getting treated. Don't tolerate it. It doesn't matter what position you're in, speak up. And I've had some people say, but I'm an individual contributor, or I'm a first-time manager. If I speak up, I'll get fired. Rally people together and take a stand. Toxicity is the worst thing that can happen in companies, and it's happening way too often.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about leadership. So there's a term out there, servant leadership. When you think about that, what does that mean to you?
I know it's a little cliche now, but people first. Making sure that the decisions you make place the people that you work with first, as a teammate, as a leader, as a friend. Organizations are still built on people. We're talking about artificial intelligence and automation and everything that's not people related, but people are still the most important part of what we're doing. When I look back over a 25-year career, I'm old, but as I look back over 25, I don't remember the projects and the daily details. I don't remember our quarterly numbers or our yearly financials, but I do remember the people that I've worked with. And serving for and with those people makes your career.
Yeah, I've had that same experience, and I think deeply about this responsibility that you have as a leader to find the talent of the individuals that work for you and put them in spaces and places where they can just excel. I think that's one of the challenges and the rewards of being a leader, is when you find the opportunities where you understand everyone has great talent. Everyone doesn't end up in the right position. But I also believe that in serving and leading people, you have this unique opportunity to help them soar when you can find places that their talent excels,
Yes.
which I think is a big part of serving them. Because what we all want is all the people around us to be successful. They're not going to work for us forever. But we want them in the places that they're at to crush it so that the next thing that they do just continues them forward. I've had an opportunity with a number of my people to like try to find those spaces. Like people have been in the wrong space in the beginning. And I've given it the latitude to move, and I think that's a big part of serving people, is allowing their talents to exceed under your leadership.
Figuring out how to do that is really hard because you start and you have 20 people, and then you have 100 people, and then you have 200 people, and as you scale, making sure that people are in the right roles is one of the most important things you can do, but the feelings that are associated with being locked into a role is challenging. And trying to figure out, well, we've tripled in size, so the job you're doing now is actually more important than it's ever been, but you're doing multiple things, and so how do we keep you focused on delivering the very best of what you can give? That's one of the hardest things to figure out.
It is the hardest thing because we get kind of tied into structure.
Yeah.
I remember one of the companies that I was growing, I came to the office and I'm like, here's the only thing I know is we're gonna reorg like every 3 months. And so we're just going to embrace change because I can just guarantee whatever we're going to optimize for, it's going to be different in 3 months. So everyone just please come along for the ride. Yeah. And it was a change for a lot of people to think like that. But if you don't have this agility or this culture where you can be transparent about how you're trying to achieve things, it's really hard to get there, especially when you're growing and scaling, because it's so fluid, it's so fast, and you have to address new challenges every quarter. And I think it's one of the asks I have of team members too is can you lean in to help us accomplish the direction that we're trying to go? Okay, so let's talk about a couple of other things I want to talk about. So how do you think about diverse leadership teams and making sure that diverse talent is also having kind of equal opportunity and inside of your organizations?
Diversity is really important, and everybody talks about it, but what does it mean? I'll speak specifically at Gab. When I moved into this role, I realized we don't have enough diversity on our leadership team. It was evident, you could see it. But then what do you do about it? Because you have to be growing to add talent. If you're flat and you start adding a bunch of talent, what happens? You have layoffs. And I've never wanted to be a leader that stacks the deck quickly, too quickly, and then has to right size by letting people go. And so getting to more of a diverse team at Gab has been a challenge because we've been growing, but we've wanted to keep our hiring in a place where it never got too out of whack. And so it's taken us time to add diversity in thought, diversity in background, diversity in gender, diversity in so many other things. And we're getting there now with the talent we've been adding, and our team is more diverse than it's ever been. But part of the challenge with diversity is if you say, oh, I like where we're at right now, tomorrow you'll be behind again. And so we've always got to be aware that as we add talent, as we look to make shifts in the organization, how are we doing it consistently, not just set moments in time and then feeling like we've arrived. It's always got to be moving and evolving.
So let's combine this a little bit with the conversation on flexibility and workplace environments. So we took a poll a little while ago, and in this room, 2 years ago, we would have all said, we're basically 90% remote. Today, that's no longer true. And we're continuing to see all of those conversations. I mean, you were at Nike, you saw their announcement this week, right? They say that all performance is related to not having people in office over the last couple of years. We have local companies that are mandating really rapid back to office strategies. And one conversation that's been true for women, excuse me, in tech has been related to flexibility being like top of the rung, right? There's pay and benefits, which have always been there. And then the next most important thing has been flexibility. And it's never meant I don't want to work the same amount of hours. It's always meant how do I make sure I can do my life and my job and be successful at all of those things? And how do you just hold me accountable and let me do my job? And it's not because I'm not willing to go in office. Lots of people go in office. Just give me the flexibility to do the things in addition to my job that make me successful. How do you think about that? And how has that evolved over the last couple of years with so many big swings on how CEOs are thinking about talent and location of their people?
So I'll first address what you said about Nike. And I was there for a while, and it was one of the best experiences of my career. So I want to be careful, but I won't. I think that's an absolute cop-out to say that innovation is halted because of remote work. Plenty of companies have done it and continue to do it. I view that as arrogance. It's a brand that over time has dominated, and they have been number one for so long that number two is a very distant second, and they got complacent. And when you get complacent, people catch up. And when they catch up, you can get passed up. And so I don't believe Nike's challenge right now is remote work. I think it's arrogance and coasting a bit and believing that the swoosh is going to get you, it's going to keep you where you're at. Remote.
Those Sambas and Giselles have come on.
Yes.
Gazelles have come on really strong.
Yes, and I'm going to get, my phone's, I'm already getting texts probably. At Gab, we have a hybrid model. So we are 3 days in, 2 days out. The 2 days you can work from wherever you want. And the reason that we've held to hybrid is because of flexibility. So we never went all the way remote because we felt like at some point it would come back. And we never went all the way in office because we started with some flexibility and it's worked for us. I'll tell you how I manage it as shortly as possible. I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in non-negotiables. And so what I do in my life, and then allow our people to do the same, is on Sunday nights, I sit down with my family, I have 4 kids, and my wife, and I say, what matters to you this week? And they'll each give me 1 or 2 things that matter, and it always surprises me what they tell me. I thought the track meet was important, but it's actually the choir concert that means more to you this week. And I will block off my calendar. I don't care if it's at 2:30 in the afternoon or 8 o'clock at night. When I've committed to my family that I will not miss those events, I don't care if there is a board meeting, a fire at work, it doesn't matter. I'm not missing it. Because I've looked my family in the eyes and I've said on Tuesday at 2:30 I'll be there. So I work in a flexible schedule, and I work with non-negotiables where when I make commitments to my family, that's more important than work. So if I'm going to do that, I can't default and say, well, I get to do that because of my title, and then I expect everyone else that works at Gab to do something different. So flexibility for me is allowing your people to be in places that matter most to them. We can't go to everything, but you can go to some things. And as long as you communicate to your manager and team that this really matters to you, our hope is that you have teammates that will say, I got you, I'll cover for you. So I absolutely believe in a flexible model, but I also believe in non-negotiables that allow you to operate within that flexibility. If you are someone who says, I've got to go run errands, I've got to go do this, I've got to go do that, and Sid said before, be the teammate everybody wants on your team. Nobody wants a teammate that's never available. So somewhere in there is this fine line of be respectful to your teammates, carry your weight, deliver, but also go do things that are important to you and show up for those that matter most.
I love the idea of calling them non-negotiables. I don't call them that in my life right now, but I might, because that's exactly what we're after, is how are we present for the things most important to us, because we stack rank decisions in our life based on that. So can we talk just for a moment around this idea of how do you figure out if a company is a cultural fit? Okay, first question. Have you ever worked for a company that wasn't a cultural fit?
Yes.
How'd that go?
I left really fast.
Yeah, okay. So that's the challenge, right?
Yep.
So why didn't you identify before that it was a bad fit?
I think anytime you're running from something, you're going to make a cultural mistake. Don't run from things. If you run, you're going to run to the next thing you're going to have to run from. So I always try to make career decisions based off of wanting to make the next move. And some of you will say, yeah, but I just got laid off and I need the next gig. I get that. But if you have any part of controlling your destiny, don't run from things, run towards things. And when you run towards, you pay different attention to parts of that culture, and I always reach out to people. I say, I see what's on LinkedIn, I see what's on social media, now tell me the truth. Glassdoor is not the place to find out about a culture. Talk about toxic. It's where everybody that's had a bad day goes and dumps their feelings. I don't trust Glassdoor, but somewhere in there, in talking to the people, is an opportunity to learn about what the day-to-day is like, and that is really important. You have to go do your homework. Reach out to people at the company. I'm thinking about coming. I just submitted my interview, or I'm through final rounds of interviews. I think I'm going to get an offer. Can I learn a little bit more about what's going on in the company? The people will tell you. Rarely will they filter in a way that you won't get some form of honesty. You have to do your homework.
And I think you have to be brave enough to ask those hard questions that sometimes we don't want the answer to.
Yes.
So I love this idea that, I love the idea of don't run from, run towards. There are circumstances, right? Because we have to provide for our families, right? And we make decisions based on that. And that is just true of the world that we live in. But oftentimes we find ourselves frustrated in a situation, and sometimes we created it because we ran away from something versus architecting what's next. And I really believe in today's world, we architect our own careers. We're never gonna be at the same company forever. And so the power of what you do is in our hands. Yes. And we should be really thoughtful about what that looks like. So what's one last piece of advice you would give to the audience as they're thinking about, how do I move up the corporate ladder?
That's a really good question. I want to make sure I answer it thoughtfully.
Don't worry, not one question was on the list of questions I provided him, if you were wondering.
There are doers in companies and there are campaigners. Might not be the perfect terminology. But there are people at Gab who I watch perform every day in a way that I personally will do whatever it takes to help them in their career. And it may not always be perfect step advancements. I think what we've fallen trapped to in the social media world of instant gratification is we all think that we can start as an individual contributor on Tuesday and be on the C-level team on Saturday. And if it doesn't happen, then we're offended that somebody didn't see our value. That's not true. Trust me that leaders of companies are in the trenches. They're feeling the stress of running a company every day. Top performers stand out. You just do. And so I think it's really important to be a doer, somebody that's in the details of your job and delivering in a way where you don't have to go tell everyone how great you are, that people are actually talking and saying, have you seen what so-and-so's doing? She's incredible. We've got to think about her for this role and that role and this next opportunity. And we have those conversations again. If you are a campaigner, you do your job less, and you're out in little pockets promoting and talking and gossiping and trying to stir everything up to see if you can rally a crowd to lead the parade for you to get your next promotion, it's not how it works. All that does is create distraction, and you become a red flag because people are saying, is he or she really doing their job, or are they just out promoting for their next job? Every opportunity I've ever seen anybody get when they have the next step is because they were performing it away in their current job where everyone knew it was time for them to take their next step.
Okay, I'm gonna end us on that because I think that's great advice. For me personally, I call it activation, this ability to take an idea and turn it into action. And I think about that a lot in teams because I couldn't agree more. The thing that sets people apart is their ability to get stuff done. And it's their ability to work in teams and just to be the person that everyone wants to play ball with. And when that happens, I think talent's recognized. I will also acknowledge that probably for some women in this room, you also feel like you've done that and you haven't had the opportunities that you anticipated, because I think that is a reality of some of the things that we face. But the thing that we all do individually control is how we show up every day and the environments that fit the talent and recognize that talent. I think one last comment that I'd love you to have, because one of the things that we've seen is that as companies have more diversity in upper leadership, they have more diversity and promotions of women inside of those companies. How do you think we start making those changes to make sure, because it really, I think the answer to the question of, am I frustrated in the promotion? Am I a doer who feels like I've been neglected? Is actually answered in making sure we have stacks and teams of leaders that are well represented so that they also recognize different leadership styles. Because I think sometimes different leadership styles don't get rewarded the same way. And I think men and women sometimes lead differently, and those have not been rewarded with some consistency.
That's very fair. When I look at Gab, this is probably a bit too transparent, but we've been flat for the last 4 or 5 months. We're still growing, but not clearly at the rate we were. We've had some inventory challenges and just so many things that hit a business when you scale. And there's still so much opportunity out in front of us. But versus the last 4 or 5 years, we're not growing at the same rate. We'll get back there with some adjustments that we've made. But when a company is flattening out a bit, you have to be really careful that you're not adding too many mid-level positions or even senior-level positions, because that's what's happening to these companies when they go make mass layoffs. They load in way too fast, and then they say, uh-oh, we overdid it, and we have to lay people off. So when I look at the opportunity to promote women internally or promote anyone internally, growth solves a lot of that. When we're growing, you're seeing opportunities to go expand the business here and add a team there and bring on a different product category there. And when you're collectively growing together, there will always be opportunities. And then within those opportunities, I don't ever want to be a leader that checks a box and says we're promoting that specific person because of we need to visually show that we're doing something. I just want the most talented people in those roles. But you also have to look and say, what does the diversity look like, or what does the background look like of the team that we're framing up here? And we've got to do more at Gab to add more mid-level opportunities so that people can have promotions earlier in their careers, and that's what we're working on. And we got to get back to growing to be able to do that.
Yeah, companies are complex, right? That's one of, I think, the things but I do believe that. And I think you demonstrate this too, that CEOs drive the culture. And the way they make decisions, the way they expect people to perform, it trickles down in organizations. And I think that you are very thoughtful about thinking about what are we going to do and how do we protect people, which are ultimately the thing that we all want. We want to find great, talented people and give them great opportunities in ways that maybe they've never had before because they're with our companies. Any final thoughts?
I don't know how many of you are searching right now, but please do me a favor.
40% said they were going to switch this year.
Okay.
That was the stat earlier. You took a poll.
You have to pay attention to this right now. I have so many people reaching out saying, can you help me with my next opportunity? I help single parents. I grew up in a single parent home. So I especially help single moms find jobs. And they'll bring me 2 opportunities from companies that have just had 4 rounds of layoffs. I am not going to direct you to apply at a company who just had 4 rounds of layoffs. So please do your homework. Don't just apply and run to the next thing because there's a posting. If a company has had 3 and 4 rounds of layoffs in the last 12 to 18 months, you need to seriously evaluate if that's where you want to be, because the 5th and 6th is probably coming. Find companies that are stable, that value their people, and are at least flat or growing, not downsizing and going the other way. It might be a short-term fix, but you're going to be right back in the same place way too soon. Be very mindful of who's laying off and who's not, and run to run to, not away from. Run
Exactly. Go to
the places who have been stable.
Okay, that is great advice. And I am going to give you a shout out for, if you follow Nate on LinkedIn, he all of the time is advocating for single parents and especially moms who are looking to find. And we need great male allies who are willing to stand up and drive those conversations. So thank you for using your voice to do that, because it makes a difference for us in the room.
It's not me. It's actually my single mom worked 3 jobs to take care of me and my baby sister. So when people give me credit for supporting single moms, it has nothing to do with me. It has to do with a mom who sacrificed everything she had to take care of me. So when I show up for single parents, it's in honor of her, not anything I've done. And I'm sitting here because a mom did everything she could to provide for us. So this council, if I could pick anywhere to be today, it's here, in memory of my mom, because she would either be on this stage leading this with Sid, or she would be here supporting this event. So thank you so much to all of you for being here today, and thank you to Sid
Thanks,
and her
Nate.
team.